Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are unpacking what is essentially a geopolitical thriller, and it's playing out in real time. But more importantly, we're going to trace exactly how a very quiet power struggle happening halfway across the world is actually secretly inflating the cost of your everyday life. We're talking massive global choke points, vanishing diplomats, and the hidden mechanics of global inflation.
Okay, let's dive right into this. The number 21 seems pretty small, right? But what if I told you that a single, random tweet affecting exactly 21% of the global economy could be the very reason your grocery bill spikes next month? I know it sounds totally wild, but the connection is incredibly direct, and it all starts in one very specific, very narrow body of water.
Think of the Strait of Hormuz as literally the jugular vein of the global energy market. We are talking about a transit point for roughly 17 million barrels of crude oil every single day. That is 21% of all the petroleum liquids in the world, flowing through a strait so incredibly narrow you could drive across it in under an hour. When this strait experiences even a minor hiccup, the shockwaves are instant. It is without a doubt the single most powerful economic choke point in the Middle East. Which brings us to the exact spark of our current crisis. We'll call it the April 17th Gambit. So on that day, Iran's foreign minister posted a tweet announcing that commercial passage through the Strait of Hormuz has been fully restored. No signed agreement, no diplomatic framework, just a tweet. But within hours, U.S. CENTCOM directly contradicts him, saying, nope, the blockade continues. Iran had just publicly surrendered its absolute greatest strategic leverage for nothing, absolutely nothing in return. And then just 48 hours later, after state media accused him of treachery, that foreign minister just vanishes from public view.
Now, that disappearing act, it wasn't just some clumsy diplomatic blunder. It was a massive, flashing red flag, signaling a regime at war with itself. See, Iran is dealing with three simultaneous, catastrophic crises right now. Their economy is in absolute freefall, with their oil revenue dependency collapsing to a historic low of just 5%. That economic crash has triggered unprecedented street protests. And we're not just talking about the usual opposition, but from the regime's own loyal, traditional base demanding answers. And all of this, the whole shebang, is happening during a terrifying leadership vacuum.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer scale of that leadership vacuum. The supreme leader, the absolute apex of Iran's entire decision-making architecture, hasn't been seen in public for over 35 days. No verified photographs, zero live addresses. The few written statements they've released under his name are literally being read aloud by other people. This means that right in the middle of a highly volatile geopolitical crisis, the top authority is functionally invisible. And nature, as they say, abhors a vacuum. According to a former Iranian member of parliament, the individual actually running the country right now is the supreme commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Vahidi. What we are watching here is a silent, completely unannounced power transfer. Unelected military commanders from the Revolutionary Guard have essentially seized the wheel from the civilian government, overruling their own elected president on foreign policy in real time.
So you might be asking yourself the obvious question here. How does an internal military takeover 6,000 miles away actually reach my wallet? It's really tempting to brush this off as just another distant regional conflict. But remember that 21% of the world's oil flowing through the Strait of Hormuz? That is the exact mechanism that physically connects Iranian political instability straight to your bank account.
Because when the people controlling that strait are entirely unpredictable, maritime insurance premiums don't just creep up, they absolutely explode. During recent disruptions along these Middle Eastern maritime routes, container freight rates skyrocketed by over 200% practically overnight. Shipping insurers reprice risk in a matter of hours, and that massive sudden spike in cost doesn't just evaporate, it gets passed directly onto you.
Let's move to how this builds, because it creates a perfect ruthless domino effect. Step 1. Maritime risk makes crude oil prices rise. Step 2. More expensive oil makes petrochemicals more expensive. And remember, petrochemicals are the essential feedstock for agricultural fertilizers. Step 3. Expensive fertilizer directly drives up the cost of farming and food production. And Step 4. You walk into your local supermarket and pay a spiked price for a box of cereal or a loaf of bread that seems to have absolutely no visible connection to a Middle Eastern strait. But the link is there. This is exactly why we have to stop thinking of inflation as just a random economic headline. It's an invisible tax. It wasn't debated in any legislature, no politician voted for it, but it is collected relentlessly at the cash register. It is paid by absolutely everyone holding a currency that is quietly losing its purchasing power, completely bypassing the government, all due to this geopolitical friction. To put that into perspective, let's look at Vietnam as an example. They import about 70% of their petroleum requirements. For an economy structured like that, every single percentage point increase in global crude prices applies direct, intense pressure to transportation costs. And when transport costs rise, the price of literally everything that moves on a truck goes up with it.
But wait, you might say, what if I drive an electric vehicle and only buy locally grown food? Well, unfortunately, you still pay this invisible tax. When import costs rise globally, central banks are forced to maintain or increase interest rates to fight off that inflationary spillover. That means higher mortgage rates for families trying to buy a home, increased costs for small businesses taking out loans, and surging interest on your consumer credit card debt. You are paying a premium, and its origin traces all the way back to a power struggle in Tehran.
So the crucial point here is how we handle it. Optimists out there argue that we have market buffers, that expanded production from the US, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE will swoop in, save us, and stabilize the market. But honestly, that's an illusion. Why? Because buffers rely on the assumption that the crisis won't escalate wildly. They require predictable actors sitting at the negotiating table. A military committee running Iran entirely consumed by internal suspicion, with zero history of accepting diplomatic compromise, is the exact opposite of predictable. Which brings us to a profound realization about the true state of this crisis. A system held together only by the concentration of force is not stable. It is pressurized. Think about it. Legitimacy inside Iran right now isn't coming from popular consent or some constitutional mandate. It is coming entirely from institutional coercion. And pressure without a functioning release valve doesn't just naturally go away. It just builds. We are basically looking at a load-bearing wall in the global energy market that has already cracked. It's a regime performing stability until the performance becomes absolutely impossible to sustain. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. When this pressurized system finally shatters and those dominoes fall all the way from the Strait of Hormuz right down to your local grocery aisle, is the global economy truly prepared? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep your eyes on the data.